Uh, Hi guys, good afternoon. My name is Sunil and I work here at Mindra as an engineering manager. These are my handles. So post this talk if you have any comments, good, bad, anything you want to bitch around, those are the tags. Okay. So the today's topic is no nonsense guide to front end design system. Okay, so why this topic? Why the choice of words? So, as a front-end developer, you all somewhere might heard of the term design system. That could be either you're using it in your team or in your project. You might have heard it from a designer in a meeting that this is something we should be using. Or this is the interesting one. Someone might have come to you and said they're using Bootstrap and Tailwind CSS as a design system. Let me be frank, these are not. Okay, so I was watching this talk the very other day, and the presenter took this very beautiful example of doors, explaining how basically design system is a perception. When one would make three different doors with different colors, different design, and different structures, but today we are not going to talk about the doors and the bootstraps of design system. My agenda would be basically to let you know the critical elements required to develop a design system. Okay, I guess the brief definition would be required because I'm assuming not all of you will be aware that what the design system is. So again, if you Google, you'll find multiple definitions. Some would say it's a design language for product. Some would say it's basically a story, how your organization designs, or some would say it's a combination of documentation, UI patterns, and React components. I'll basically break it down into two parts. One would be design system as a brand identity or the design language. Okay, so when we say design language, what design language is? So design language is for any product. It basically comprises of visual elements. Could be font, it could be typography, grid, the layout which you see of the website. All these visual elements combines and talks about the design language. Now, why? Now anything just a second. Sorry. So now anything which defines your product basically and makes you browse on that website and have the similar experience. So a good example I can take of is CRED. So CRED uses neomorphism. I'm not sure how many of you use CRED. Raise hands. Okay, there are a bunch. So I guess this would be a good example. CRED uses neomorphism design language. Now, past, like I've been using CRED for like 4 or 5 years now. And now, if let's say, for example, if the same design language, same neomorphism design language is represented in a different way to me. So the first thing that strikes in my mind is CRED. So now, after seeing this, if I show you this, or let's say this, one thing that comes to your mind is CRED because the design language which they have adopted that is getting used in multiple places. And the second element of design system is basically the tool or the component library. That's I guess very fair. Everyone is aware about component libraries. Google has its material, IBM has its Carbon, Microsoft has Fluent, and we have also developed our in-house that's called Appleak. Okay, so I broke down to two parts. Let's very important and design language is token. Small definition that tokens are basically design elements, very tiny atoms, just smaller than the atoms, I would say. Okay, so another definition of tokens, which again that basically is more understandable, is it's a second language to communicate between a developer and a designer. Now, let's say one day your designer comes to you and he has this requirement. He wants a red colored solid delete button with an error icon. Now, as a developer, we have questions. There will be a couple of questions here that which red color you want, what is the hex, or the error icon, what should be the error icon. Do you have an SVG or any other image format of that? Another question could be, what should be the border color of that button? Is it the same red color which you're using, or is the basically a darker variant of that? What is the hex? That might make us frustrating. So what I'm doing here is I'm naming those variables. Let's say the color code which we have of red color. I have named it as color error, and the icon I have named it as icon error. Now again, let's restate the problem which designer was having, which designer was giving us a red color solid delete button with an error icon. Now by this, it's really easy for a developer now. I can directly use my button component, and in my APIs color and icon, I can pass those variables, and this is done. So that's how the token terminology works. Okay, so I use this famous open source tool that's called Salesforce Theo. What it does is basically takes your YAML file. It will have all the tokens, list of colors, fonts, sizes you have, and it spits out CSS, SCSS, JS, even XML if you're basically developing for Android and iOS. So Theo is a heavy library. It's basically comprehensive. So I took the inspiration from that and developed my own tokenizer tool. On the left hand side, if you see, that's the snippet of my YAML. I have picked the colors for now. And on the right hand side is the code. Now, the problem I was facing was the variables. So if you see, I have picked lightest, light, lighter, darker, dark. Now, after this, one day, my designer, again, is a very good friend of mine. He came to me and he said, Sunil, we have one more color, which is basically dark than the dark. So I've added, what I did was, after my dark, I add darkest. Now, again, he comes to me and says, Sunil, we have one more color, which is between darker and the dark. So what I did was I added darkish in the middle, and I knew he'll come again to me and he'll put me in that darkness. So I might end up naming those variables as dark night. So I basically skipped that, and what I did was started laying out in a grid, rather from 100 to 500. It can grow, depends on your color. So that was my ideology. Now the benefit here is, let's say tomorrow he comes to me and says we missed out and we want to add a color between 100 and 200. I can directly push in 150 and that's done. Or let's say we messed up completely. We want to change the entire primary palette from purple to, let's say, blue or something. So what I can do is I can directly change the numbers to 150, 250, 350, and that's done. So this is the output from my tokenizer component, tokenizer package. It gives me three variants. One is SCSS, CSS, and JS. Okay, so how it's useful now? So the entire thing, me and my designer are now sharing the same set of tokens. He puts it into the Figma. I pull out from Figma, and the same variable I can use it in my code. The benefit here is I don't have to remember all the thousands or hundreds of color code again. Okay, so that was all about what tokens are, how to create them, what I was using, how I modified the packages to create the tokens. Now, how to use them. Once the tokens are there, you created everything, how to use them. Now, one simple example would be, let's say if you're using style components. Anyone aware of style components? Okay, pretty much. Okay. So let's say, for example, you use style components, you can directly use this JS file and import it and use it. But let's say if you are someone who doesn't like your CSS into JS, like me, I don't like it. So what else? So let's say, for example, in CSS, in SCSS, basically, you will see something like this, and then you are stuck. How? This is on the top. If you see, that's a token color variable. How I'm using it, I've used two map-get functions. The first one basically fetches the blue object, and the second one picks the 100th color from that. But again, this looks messy. We cannot go with that, definitely. So I found this very good open source tool called Recruitment. Now, how it helps me is, sorry, how it helps me basically, it gives you an initialization function. In this case, it's add color. It could be add padding, it could be add border. What you can do is, in a single file, you can initialize all your variables into this function, and later in your component, if you want to use that, you can simply use the functions which they have. Those are very similar to the CSS property you have. So let's say I want to use the same background color here. So just I have to do is use the color function, blue, and then 100. As simple as that. Okay, so this till here, I explained you regarding the design language part, how to create tokens, how to use them. Now comes the second part, which we'll talk about, in which we'll talk about the components and how to create them. Because I guess as a developer, for us, I guess 70 to 80% work would be developing the components, and I will be explaining more further on the concepts and the design patterns you can use to develop those components. Okay, so the first one is decorator pattern. I know it's a backend terminology. You might think why I'm doing this. You might think I'm crazy. I'm not. Just listen. Just listen to this. So this is a basic definition of decorator pattern. It's basically a structured design pattern used in software development to add functionalities to objects without altering their existing structure. Now, what if I say that this is something I can use in this particular design pattern? So how? I'll explain how. So in React's higher order component, everyone is aware of higher order component. Okay. So in React's HSC, so what's the similarity is basically the wrapper concept, which both of them has. How? So in case of higher order components, a component is basically wrapped into a function to enhance or modify its structure. Similarly, in decorator pattern, the object is wrapped and it's provided new functionality and responsibilities dynamically without changing its structure. Now, how? Hello, hello. Sorry. So, how I used it? I used it into my text component. I'll take a very simple example here. Just, just not to complicate this. This is not supporting me. It's my office. Okay, so I took an example of text component here. So there are two parts. If you see on the left hand side, I'm using some tags. I created some tags in the React file, and on the right side, I created some tags. Now, if you compare on the left hand side, I have page header 2, page header 3, which basically is difficult to read, difficult to remember also for a developer who will be using that design system. Why? Because particularly in text component, there are HTML elements, let's say H1, H2, H3, which are very similar to the existing HTML semantic tags which you have. Then why not use them? Why I'm creating another layer of tags which whosoever the developer is also remember that. So what I did was I changed the tag writing terminology and I did text.h1, text.h2, text.h3, which is very, again, similar to what it's exactly there, because in HTML, these tags are already available. And again, it makes my developer to remember all the things. You don't have to like do all these mistakes and all. Now, how I develop this? So if you see, there are three sections. Focus on B and C. So B here is your HOC, your higher order component. What I'm doing is it just has two parameters, name and tag. Tag has a default span because HTML won't provide all the tags. You can give it any name you want. Let's say I've given caption in C, but there is no HTML tag for caption in HTML. So how this works is in your create component HOC, I'm passing two parameters. It takes a tag, it appends, it basically returns me a new element. As I said, in the decorator pattern, you get a new component. Similarly, I'm getting a new component here with all the React component properties like children and props and everything. And inside that, I'm creating an element of that tag. Now, the tag could be anything. Like on C, if you see, I have div h1, h2, h3, and I have created all the components like that. Okay. Moving forward, there is another pattern which we can use. That's called observer pattern. we'll do the ritual. We'll go to the definition first. This pattern allows an object to notify of changes to other objects without directly coupling the objects to one another. Don't worry, even I didn't understand the first time what this was. Okay, so I'll give you a quick example. Treat it as a subscription model. On one side, you have all the observers in place, and on the other side, you have the subjects. And what is happening? All your subjects are basically subscribing to the observers, and whatever change is happening on the observer side, that will be notified to the subject. Can someone give me an example how this analogy can be used in the React component, or I would say in a design component? My wife told me don't ask questions in the middle, you'll get stuck. Yes, she was right. Okay, I'll give an example for that. So I guess React's context API gave me that particular feature. How I've used that in accordion component. What I'm doing is at the top, there is a create context function using which I'm creating my context. Here, there are two components. On the left, there's an accordion and there's an accordion item. On the accordion is my observer and the accordion items are my subjects. I'm passing, so from the provider, I'm passing my functions on double and get index. With the handle click and get item index. And the same things are getting called from the accordion item. So that's how the design patterns I'm using. Now there can be multiple other patterns. I would suggest you all to go back, and if you find anything which is related to React, just send me over. Okay, one more thing. While creating a component or code smells, now this is very subjective topic. I know someone would find one correct way or someone find the other correct way. But according to me, I'll give you few examples where I see there are code smells. So this is a model component. The difference between two is one has an is open parameter, a second has a trigger. If you see on the first, the trigger is outside the model. Now, let's say in the first one, the is open changes, the entire component get re-renders. Everyone aware of React re-rendering, right? Everyone has faced this problem. So in the first part, let's say if I click a button, if I clicking it again and again, my entire model component, whatever inside that is, will get re-rendered. But in the second part, what I'm doing is I have a trigger param and I'm just passing the button. So let's say there is change in that button, or let's say tomorrow I has passed something else, and if I click that, my entire model won't re-render. Whatever content is there, it will show that. So that's a code smell. You don't want your components to re-render again and again. Another example, again, subjective if you like this or not, as I already mentioned. So in an accordion item, so one thing is I put on change or on click, but ideally your accordion is not changing, it's toggling. So rather than putting on change or on click, you should put on toggle. Okay, last slides. So your design system is created, your components are created. Now, the one thing you want is for a playground. So once your components are created, you will release it, but you need your developer to basically access those and work on that. So you need a playground for that. I know Storybox is one very famous. I guess a couple of you might have used it. I like Monaco Editor. That's basically an open source tool by Microsoft. So even I'm not sure how many of you know Code Sandbox were using the same Monaco editor earlier before they shifted the entire thing to Vs. So how this works is, I'm not sure if you play. Yeah. So I clicked on edit. Now on my button, when I check what all props are available, so my Monaco editor gives me all the list of params, and I can basically add that, and it works. These params against is TypeScript and is taken from your type object, whatever you have. Okay. Thank you.